I was born at the Greenwood LaFleur Hospital, 1944. It was called the King's Daughters Hospital at that time.
I was born in the newer Greenwood LaFleur Hospital in 1948, November the 4th, 1948.
It was
What do you remember?
a cotton market on the Yazoo River. The Tallahatchie and the Yallabushy came together 2 or 3 miles upstream and formed the Yazoo, and it would get high in the spring and go down in the summer. But they had levees around, and they had a cotton market there. It was called the largest inland cotton market in the nation.
Down the river?
Sometimes they had river boats that would take it down, but when we were there, that I can recall, it was mainly by truck or by rail.
Right.
Gotcha. And your grandparents, were they involved in the cotton industry? Were they farmers? What was the background of your grandparents?
Mr. Hartman.
Mr. Hartman was a small store, dry goods store, grocery store out in the middle of the Mississippi Delta in a place, crossroads, called Berkeley. And he'd lease land and raise cotton across from his store. So he was a small merchant, but widely respected.
The Womacks, we called them Pappy and Ma'am, and she had grown up in Coffeyville, Mississippi, and that's where our father was born, in Coffeyville, and he had a brother and sister. But when they lived in Greenwood, they lived on Mary Street, and our grandfather was a hotel clerk at the Greenwood LaFleur Hotel, right there on the Yazoo River, and then he was at the Hotel Irving. Yeah, he was a clerk there.
The Irving became the Alluvian Hotel.
Right, the Alluvian now.
So when we stayed there,
right,
that was
your
grandfather had worked there.
Right, correct.
Your great-grandfather worked there.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, as I understand it, he was born in 1912, in October of 1912, graduated from Greenwood High School in 1930. He worked with jobs after school, he told me, hauling coal for people that were not indigent but feeble, and put coal in their coal cellar. And he did that from 12 on.
Right.
And the Depression hit them hard. There was very little money, very little jobs. Our grandfather, Womack, was laid off from his job. Right. He was unemployed for a good while and then started working as a clerk in a hotel.
All right.
Did Charles Womack, did he graduate high school?
Our grandfather, I think, graduated high school, and our father graduated high school.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So if he was born in Coffeyville, when did they move to Greenwood?
They moved to Cleveland first and stayed there for several
They were in
years.
Cleveland. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And then moved to Greenwood about 1920 or something, and because they experienced the 1918 influenza epidemic when they were in Cleveland.
Right.
People left pots of soup on their doorstep.
So we're talking about Charles right now. Charles Womack, how many siblings did he have?
He had a sister, Ruth Pate, who was 2 years younger, and then had a brother, Gale Womack, who was 4 years younger than him.
Yes.
I remember Ruth Pate, obviously, but what about Gale?
Gale lived in Jackson, so you didn't see him much. He passed away in 1989, and then Aunt Ruth Pate died in 1990.
Right.
They were both smokers, and Ruth Pate had lung cancer. I don't know about what caused the death of Uncle Gale.
Did they?
And he had 2 children, Sylvia and Bill Womack.
Would y'all? Yeah, Bill.
Bill, right.
Would y'all see Gale growing up? Would he?
Yeah, they lived in Greenwood for a while before they moved to Jackson, and they would come for holidays.
Right.
And
yeah,
he was,
Thanksgiving and
How
Christmas.
much younger? He was 4 years younger.
4 years younger.
4 years younger,
And he served in World War II and in the Korean War.
Really?
Yeah.
He was given a battlefield commission on Guadalcanal.
Really?
With the Army, not the Marines.
Right. Oh, interesting.
So he came in the latter part of the campaign in Guadalcanal, and for whatever reason was commissioned a second lieutenant at that time, I was told.
I mean, because did I ever meet Gale? I don't think I ever met him.
You probably just knew Geneva, the mother, right. Geneva and Bill, and Sylvia had moved out to Houston, Texas, so Bill lived in Jackson. So.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay.
You had been around him.
And then your mother, Pauline Hartman.
Was an only child. She had had a brother, a younger brother, who died at childbirth. She was
Gotcha.
born in the family home in Berkeley.
Did her parents stay in Berkeley, or did they come
Yes.
to Greenwood?
They stayed in Berkeley and ran the store there next to the house. They wound up having 2 stores in Itabena, which is between Greenwood and Berkeley. And in the 1930s, there was some fires that caused the destruction of the store.
And then our grandmother Hartman passed away in, 1955, I believe.
54.
54. Then our grandfather came to live at our house within a few months.
Was this the same house that I saw growing up?
Absolutely.
Did y'all grow up in that house as far
Yeah,
as?
well,
Yeah.
it was built in 1949.
Right.
Okay.
We lived in an apartment on Strong Avenue
Really?
with
With
the
the Kellys.
Kellys,
Yeah.
who were the landlords, were very nice people. And then my grandfather paid for the construction of...
Mr. Hartman.
Mr. Hartman paid for the construction of the house that we were in at 307 East Monroe Avenue,
Right.
which was a cotton field shortly before
Right.
the house was built.
And if you look at it on Google Maps, like I was looking the other day, just because I like to do that, and it's just, subdivision and cotton field.
Right.
And I remember
right.
like 2 blocks away was the cotton.
When I was a child, 7, 8, 9 years old, there was a cotton field in back of our house.
Right.
In the back of the house.
In the
Yeah,
back of
in
the
the
house.
backyard.
A backyard and then a cotton field.
Wow.
Right.
How about that? I think I can remember, like throughout the neighborhood, the pavement changes,
Right.
and I'm sure it's just how they paved
Right.
it.
They took some cotton field up and made houses.
This is something I always found interesting about the Delta and just Mississippi period. River Rock pavement, like all the pavement in Greenwood and even
And the brick streets. They had brick
and
streets.
brick
yeah.
streets. But when we would drive from Birmingham to Greenwood, I remember I always, even if I was like starting to doze off or anything like that, I knew when we were in Mississippi because the pavement would change.
Right.
And it was the round River Rock pebble
Right.
in the pavement. I guess it's just how they did it with the Department of Transportation or whatever in Mississippi. But I can remember the River Rock being all over Greenwood and lots of Mississippi.
Right.
But
Right.
what do y'all remember about Greenwood itself? Like, was it pretty? I mean, was it always bustling? Was it always busy growing up?
It was, and
What was the
it was a
population?
good.
You might know.
Yeah.
that,
Do you know the population of
Back when y'all
Greenwood
were
back
in the
when we
40s?
were?
No, I don't. I know it reached a high of about 20 or 21,000, and recently it was down to 13,000.
Right. Yeah.
But at one time after the war, they had bus service bringing the domestic employees that worked in a lot of people's homes. We had a domestic lady named Laura Adams that took care of my sister and me, and
She raised us. Yeah.
She raised us.
Do you remember her being there from the beginning?
Well, from the early
retired?
50s
Right.
on forever,
Right,
until
right.
she became ill. Unfortunately, she was a smoker and developed arteriosclerosis and wound up having to have both of her legs
Legs
amputated.
But she was right there at both of our weddings.
Right,
Yours
she
in
came to my
Chattanooga.
medical school
Right,
graduation.
medical school graduation, New Orleans, and then right there at our wedding too,
I remember driving into Greenwood coming from the east, and
from Valley.
was
Hill,
yes,
yeah.
and wasn't she at a nursing home?
Right.
Right,
She was
right.
on the
Stop
nursing home on the east side of Greenwood.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, near the airfield.
Golden Age, yeah, Golden Age nursing home, and our grandfather Hartman helped, and grandmother Hartman helped provide funds for that.
Yeah.
And our grandfather Hartman also helped fund Valley. What's the school? The
Mississippi Valley.
Mississippi Valley. He put a lot of money into that school when it was first being developed. in
That
the
was at
early
Itabena.
50s.
In
In
Itabena.
Itabena.
Right.
It was an African American school.
Right. He funded a lot of money for that, and he funded a lot of money in our church, in the First Christian Church. Yeah, he kept it from going bankrupt
He used his house
as collateral.
as collateral to help save the mortgage in the depths of the Depression when the church couldn't pay its mortgage.
Right.
This is
Hartman.
Grandfather
And he
Hartman.
was on the school board and board of supervisors.
No, I don't think he was on the board of supervisors that appointed the school board.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And so your father was wounded in World War II.
Twice.
The second time with an injury to his leg, to his lower leg.
Severe.
Do you know when he was injured? It was in 44.
All I know is that I was named after him because he knew he was going to be shipped to Europe as a replacement, and he wanted someone to carry his name.
Right.
And then he went in with the 3rd Division in southern France. They had already landed, and he was a replacement second lieutenant. And he served in combat up until December or January of 44, or January of 45, and wound up by surviving as an acting company commander.
Right.
And he told me that the commander before him was killed and the commander after him was killed in combat, so he felt lucky to just be wounded badly and get out.
I would love to, I'm curious the timeline, like when he got there, how long was he there before he was wounded, and then...
He was wounded in his shoulder first, and I think that was right away.
Yeah, right away.
Yeah, right away.
And then he recovered, he went back, and that's when he got the lower leg injury. That was in France?
In France. I remember being told it was near Nancy, Nancy. Nancy.
Yeah.
And somewhere in that area was where he was wounded, and then he wound up in the hospital system.
Well, I heard the story they were going to amputate his leg, and there was a Cuban doctor that had this new procedure to try to save his leg, but he was in rehab back in the States.
He had operations, multiple small operations to bleed his wound out, and he wound up with his right foot was about half the size
of his left foot.
Of his left foot because of the debridement that had been done.
I can remember as a child, Laura would walk me from our house across the bridge to go to dance class. I can remember that quite well.
That from the house across the bridge?
Right.
Wow, that's a good walk.
Right.
Yeah, but we walked a lot and did a lot of bicycle riding.
And we rode our bikes.
Yeah.
And summertime we would have movies every Thursday night. Somebody would put up a sheet and have a 16mm projector and have about 30 or 40 kids over.
Wow.
And we'd watch grade C, grade B westerns and Hopalong Cassidy and Lash LaRue.
Yeah, and you had a lot of boys on our street, surrounding streets your age. There wasn't really anybody close to my age, but I would go have friends over, or either they would come to our house to play. But you had next door, across the street, the Dales were 2 houses away.
Right.
You had
and we'd go play in the cotton fields, which were adjacent.
And follow the DDT.
Follow the
mosquito.
During the summer, every night during the summer, a DDT truck would come by and put out a fog of DDT, and we would get on our bicycles and ride directly behind the DDT truck for blocks and blocks. So that was probably not the wisest thing to do. The other thing is that we would go to the shoe store, and they would fluoro your feet with the new shoes on, and we would play with the machine, X-ray machine, stick our hands in the bottom, and the other guy would look through the scope and see the fingers wiggling,
See the bones.
see bones. Yeah. So that was an interesting source of radiation.
Tell me about school. What do you remember about school growing up?
I remember I walked a block to school,
to the Little Red
schoolhouse for the first and second grades.
Right. And I went to just first grade there.
And I had to go to summer school after the first grade. So
because you were such a poor student?
I don't know. I don't know why I had to go to summer school, but I did. And I wound up being over at the Little Red Schoolhouse. They had a playground there, and I hired some teenagers to supervise the kids. And I was like 5, 6, 7 years old, and would go over there and stay there most of the day.
What's hilarious about that is I remember doing that.
Yeah, you went.
They were still doing it in the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely. Box hockey and so forth.
Box hockey.
Right.
And pickup sticks and stuff of that nature.
Right. And then we went to North Greenwood School, which was not that far. We'd ride our bikes to school.
That was about a mile.
Right.
That was the elementary school?
Right.
I was in elementary through the 6th grade, and then the 7th and 8th and 9th grade was where Davis School.
And mine was just 7th and 8th by the time 4 years later.
Right.
It's just 7th and 8th. And then we
Right.
went to, the Greenwood High School was built your sophomore year, is that
I think
right?
so,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And I remember being not a good band player. I started out on the clarinet, and after a couple of months, they switched me to the oboe, and they kept 2 kids back in the junior high band, but didn't go to the high school band. I was one of 2 kids that they held back.
You were held back.
I was held back for my ability on the oboe.
Squeaking.
Very,
on the
very a bad oboe player. So I decided that I was not intended to be a musician and started working for the Annual.
Right.
And taking pictures with a Crown Graphic photo, 4x5 plates, and we had a dark room, we had everything. So I enjoyed that quite a bit, taking pictures of the school activities, and did that as my extracurricular activity.
And then your science projects, too.
Well, and that enabled me to take pretty good color photographs of my science projects, which had a lot of visual impact with a lot of blood.
Right, with the chickens.
Chickens and the
Rats.
rats.
But he went to the National Science Fair, and
Yep.
then got a summer job in Washington.
Tell us about that science project.
The science project that I did was to write off to the National Cancer Institute and said, I am a junior at Greenwood High School. Can you send me some Rao sarcoma chicken virus? And so in the mail, a week later, this box of chicken virus showed up, and I got some chickens and kept them up in a little house, a little pen where behind our house, and injected the virus into the wings of the chickens, and 2 or 3 weeks later, a tumor appeared, and I tried this spleen. I said, spleens don't seem to have cancer. I didn't know it any better, so I ground up calf spleen and injected this foreign material into the chicken cancer, and it did something to the cancer because it was a foreign body, but I didn't realize it wasn't therapeutic. But I made gory pictures and used that, and I built the project myself, and it looked very uneven. The architecture of the wood was very curvy, and it didn't look as finished as a lot of science projects look nowadays.
But you got first place in the Mississippi Science Fair and got to go to Washington.
Got a free trip to Kansas City, so we flew from...
You and the teacher.
And the teacher, and my mother and father took the infected chickens in the station wagon to Kansas City, Missouri, and went through a tornado.
Right.
And they said if they lived to be 100, I would owe them a lot.
Right.
And that was true.
Right.
How did you come up with that? Was it teachers? Who was it that got you to the point where you were able to come up with that?
I don't really recall. I just decided to do it, and then I was able to use my photographic skills to really enhance the project. That was the thing that really was the... And I used the school tape recorder. Next year, I did a science project, and the winnings from the first year, I used to buy a carousel projector. And I made slides, and I made an audio tape on a reel-to-reel recorder that lasted a couple of hours. And I read the description and coordinated the two so you could pick up a telephone with a plug-in jack into the back of the recorder and listen to my description. So it was showmanship to some extent.
Yeah.
What were some of your favorite memories about Pete when you...
Well,
Baby sister.
my baby sister, she was the really good athlete, but I had gone to college when she started doing her track career and basketball career.
I ran high school track in the 8th grade, so I lettered 5 years in track, and then we didn't start girls basketball till I was a sophomore. So
Right, and they won the district or something in basketball.
Our senior year, we had gone from not winning any games our first year to being district champions, and we played half court.
Yeah,
We
3
didn't
on
play
3.
full-
Three
yeah,
on
we
three.
didn't play full court. So when I was fouled, somebody else would take my free throws.
Because they didn't want girls to run, right?
Well, we didn't have Rover when I was in high school. That was later, that they had a Rover who could go back and forth from offense to defense and back and forth, so forth.
So with the difference in age, did you two grow up Like just
We were somewhat separate because there was 4.5 years between my birth and her birth. So there was a difference. She probably should have been held back. That's what we did with our kid.
Absolutely, yes.
But
Because I had a November birthday. I was one of the very youngest, and people that were born 11 months before me, you know, they did real well. So, yeah, I was very, very young. I should have been held back.
our mother was a teacher, and she taught history and civics. She was a junior high history civics teacher.
In Starkville and in Carrollton.
When y'all were born, she wasn't teaching.
No, she was not teaching. She
She-
was the Girl Scout leader and would get me to dance and Girl Scouts and all the activities. Yeah, we'd had one car, and our father had a company-owned truck.
His job
Right,
was
sure.
going to all the plantations in the Delta and seeing if they needed any industrial supplies. And then he'd bring them by the next week in the back of his truck, put oxygen cylinders for welding and
Right.
stuff of that nature, and all sorts of, because the plantations had machine shops that
Right.
would repair their equipment. And so he had this big route. He'd go to different
Charleston.
which was 40, 50 miles away.
Right.
So he had associates and knew everybody all over the
Right,
Delta.
right.
And his
Worked
sister,
for automotive parts.
automotive parts company, which started in Memphis. And my Aunt Ruth Pate, she worked for Farmer Supply Cooperative. And she was the secretary to the man who ran it. And so she kind of ran the
Yes, she did.
did
She
it.
was well respected.
Everybody knew her. And they'd go in and
Right.
talk to her rather than wait for Mike Carter.
Right, right.
And she was the entrepreneur. She bought 3M stock starting in the 1950 or 51, one share at a time, and it multiplied. And when she finally passed away, she had a lot of 3M stock just from buying one or two shares and reinvesting the dividends.
Yeah.
She was the entrepreneur in our family.
Right,
Do you
right.
think that's where you got it?
Yeah.
Did she teach you how to?
No, I just watched her. You
And
know,
they shared a birthday.
we shared a birthday.
He was supposed to be born in May, but he was born on April the 24th.
In 1948, she won a Dodge car
That's right.
with from an American Legion lottery, and there were 1,000 tickets. It's so much a ticket, and she had 424, which is our birth date,
Right.
and it won. And she had that car from 1948 until about 1956, when our grandfather Womack was going out to the Greenwood airport to pick her up, and the car got stuck on the railroad tracks. Fortunately, he got out, but a train came through and just tore up the car.
Right.
But the car lasted from 48 to 56.
Yeah.
So it was a nice thing to win a prize, win a Dodge car as a lottery prize.
All right, so high school in Greenwood. How big was your senior class?
I think about 125. It was a segregated school. The schools weren't integrated until Paula had graduated.
When I came back and did my student teaching, that was when it was first, so in 1970. But I had a little over 200, about 225 in my graduating class.
And I had like 125.
Right.
Did you know everybody in your class pretty much?
Pretty much.
Yes.
Pretty much. A class that small, you get to
Right.
know them. Jimmy Abbott lived next door, and he was obviously the first one to graduate in my class,
Right.
named Abbott. And I was one of the last ones to graduate, named Womack. So we were.
But you were valedictorian.
No, I wasn't.
Oh.
I was fifth.
Oh, were you?
Helen Williford was valedictorian. Dick Short was salutatorian. He
Okay.
went to Davidson, became a
Right.
Presbyterian minister,
Right.
and then I was
Oh, I
like
didn't know
fourth
that.
or fifth or something.
Wow.
But I got a science scholarship.
Right.
To where?
Well, it was generic to go anywhere, but I went to Vanderbilt and got a founder scholarship there to go to Vanderbilt. And the tuition was $1,000. It just raised tuition from $800 to $1,000, and I had a $1,500 scholarship.
Wow.
So that was pretty good.
You pocketed the rest of the money.
That was for books. And food and room and board.
Right. And the cost of me going to Delta State in 1966 and the 4 years I was there, it was a little over $300 a semester.
Talk about how you were going to Ole Miss, and
Oh, yeah.
and first of all, talk about your mother going to
Right. She had graduated from Ole Miss. Yeah, she had gotten her
20s,
teaching degree
30s.
in 38 or
38.
38, 1930.
Was it a 4-year program?
Right.
She went her first 2 years to Gulf
Gulf-
Park, and
Gulf
then our grandmother, her mother, became ill and took a year off to take care of her, and went to the Sunflower, Moorhead to the college, junior college in Moorhead. Then I think she took something from Delta State, didn't she?
Oh, I just remember Moorhead.
Moorhead, then, you're
and
right.
then went her last 2 years.
And then to Ole Miss.
to Ole
And
Miss
she was
and
in
graduated.
Oxford.
In Oxford.
2 years.
Right.
You were
And then
going-
I was going to go to Ole Miss. My parents, I was already accepted, had my room paid for. I was going to go with my best friends. And then that summer, at the last minute, I said, well, I know I want to teach, and Delta State was a good teacher's college. So I'm glad I ended up going to a smaller school. That's where I met my husband.
Yeah. The rest is history.
Right.
That's what we're going to get to that.
Right.
So you went to Vanderbilt.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know you were going to study
I
medicine?
always wanted to be pre-med because the previous summer I had worked in Washington at the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology and made slides, and I had a summer job there, and the sons and of a lot of the Army doctors, their kids had jobs there, you know, and we made all these slides for pathologists. And I said, this looks good to me. And so the next year when I graduated from high school, I went out to the hospital pathology lab and asked Dr. Trigg, can I get a job here this summer? I want to be a pathologist. And he said, okay. And so I worked there with him for 3 summers. In 1965, I went to New York State and sold dictionaries door to door.
That was between which years?
That between my junior and senior year in college, but after I graduated from high school, my freshman year and my sophomore year, I worked in the hospital pathology lab.
And talk about Dr. Trigg.
Oh, Dr. Trigg was my mentor.
Yes.
And he had polio, taking care of Alton Ochsner's grandchild, and he wound up on an iron lung in Texas for about a year, and then had to wear a chest respirator when he slept every night. So he was quite frail and worn down, but he had his mind. He had 3 sons, Daniel and David and Joey.
And the 2 older boys were in my class.
Right.
My graduating class.
Right. I talked to Dr. David Trigg recently, and he told me about his father was out in the Pacific in 1952 for the hydrogen bomb first explosion as part of the support team, and they were there with him.
Right.
They lived on Eniwetok and Kwajalein. Wow. And they were about as close to the radiation, you know, as you can get.
Right.
And there were about 20 or 30 kids on the island, and they didn't have any school. They just took off for a year.
Right.
So David got behind and wound up with his younger brother.
Right, with Danny.
Dr. Trigg went to a Ku Klux Klan rally in Greenwood to see what it was like, but he couldn't drive. Someone had to drive him because of his residual of his polio, and he went to a Klan rally to see what was going on. He was Catholic, and the Klan was anti-Catholic. It was an interesting time.
Yep.
And what do you remember about high school, Mom?
Well, I was co-editor of the yearbook and my senior year, but I worked on the annual staff all 4 years, and you knew everybody, you know.
You ran track.
Yeah, ran track, played basketball, and worked on the annual. Yeah.
Won the Home Ec Award?
Oh yeah, I was president. That's right, I'm glad you're right. I was president of the Future Homemakers of America, which was a joke because my best friend in high school made my projects, and others were in the class were making their wedding dresses or Easter outfits, and mine was the one outfit I had to make in class was very simple and basic. But anyway, and I wasn't known for cooking either, so everybody in the auditorium laughed when I got the award, the $10 cash award for being outstanding future homemaker of America. That really was funny.
So you figured out in that summer before college that you wanted to go to Delta State for the teaching.
Right.
Did you know you wanted to do PE?
Yes, right away. And Margaret Wade, the head of the girls' physical education department, was outstanding. And after I graduated, 3 years later, she started back the women's basketball team at Delta State, and they were national champions, powerhouse for about 4 years, and would play big colleges like UConn and play in Madison Square Garden, and I mean, they were really something, yeah.
So that coach was your instructor?
And, right.
So Chuck, you finished up at Vanderbilt in '66?
Yes.
And then where?
Then I moved that summer to New Orleans and started working on a master's in biochemistry at Tulane, and then took my freshman medical school courses that summer, and then took courses for the next 3 or 4 years and worked on a project. But I graduated in 1970. I'd gotten out of the research phase by that time because the stuff I was doing did not turn me on, and dealing with people turned me on. I enjoyed interacting with people more than doing the science, and went up to Shreveport. And by that time, Sally and I had gotten married in '68 after she graduated. She graduated from Vanderbilt in nursing one Saturday, and we got married the next Saturday.
In 1968.
Go back, you had met her in Nashville.
I met her the day after she turned 18. She was born in February,
Right.
and she was so smart, she got advanced. She skipped the
Was
first
it
grade.
First grade.
First grade. She said, but it hurt her emotionally and socially, so she wanted to make sure that Nancy, who was born in
Late
October,
October, yeah.
was held back.
Yeah.
Close to your birthday.
Right.
You talk about when you met her at Vanderbilt.
We had a blind date to go to a basketball game in February of '65, and went to the Grand Ole Opry afterward.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
It was cheap then, and sat in those pews and had a good time. And then that summer, I went, as I said, to New York State and sold dictionaries door to door for Southwestern Company.
Right.
Is that how you figured out that you were a people person? Was
Yeah.
that door to door?
Oh yeah, I could sell books to people door to door. The most I ever sold in one day was 13. I'd make $5 profit a dictionary. So I made some money, but I decided I didn't want to go door to door the rest of my life.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, if you feel like scratching that itch, you can go sell the Trump Bible if you want for door to door for $60.
It was, if you can sell a dictionary, you can sell an operation.
Right.
Because the people need the operation.
All right, so we're talking about your high school experience. So, Mom, talk about how when you were in high school, there was talk of integration and all that, and sort of talk about your experience with that. I'm curious about that.
Well, I can remember at the bus station when I'd go get on the bus to ride up to Clarksdale to visit my friends that I'd met at Camp DeSoto when I went to Camp DeSoto for several summers, seeing the white-only signs over the water fountains and the restrooms and so forth.
This was in Greenwood?
This was in Greenwood, yeah, and also in Clarksdale. We had Laura at our house, but we weren't in school with any Afro-Americans. So, but by the time I went back in 1970 to do my student teaching, and by the way, the teacher that I was, my supervising teacher, when I got there, I'd had her in high school, and the first day I got there, she said, I had girls only, and she said, there they are, and for the next 6 weeks, it was the students and me. I got an A+ in student teaching, but had no supervision whatsoever.
You were just a body to...
I was there learning as I was doing my student teachings.
Obviously, a lot of things with the civil rights movement, the Freedom Riders, all that sort of stuff, came through Greenwood. A lot of that when y'all were...
Right.
Well, see, I was in school in Vanderbilt,
Right.
when a lot of this was happening. The summer of '63, when Medgar Evers was murdered in June of '63, I was taking English literature from Ms. Williford as a Mississippi State elective.
Oh,
And the young man who sold Medgar Evers the rifle was in my class. He recognized it from a photo in the newspaper.
Medgar Evers or
The DeLay Beckwith
Yeah.
traded with this young man a pistol for the rifle, and the young man recognized the rifle, informed the FBI, and was ostracized and chased out of Greenwood for informing on DeLay Beckwith.
Gotcha.
So, who was an Episcopalian, and he used to, I'm told by Jimmy Abbott, next door neighbor, that he would stand there with a gun in his shoulder holster and said he would kill anyone African American who tried to integrate the Episcopal Church there.
Wow.
So that's the story I heard in retrospect.
and somehow I didn't hear about Emmett Till until after the fact, you know.
I've heard about Emmett Till in 1955. I was 11 years old, and I was in the 5th grade, and one of the kids in my class, his older brother, was one that found the body, on the river, floating, decomposed. At that time, they called out the National Guard, and you could see soldiers up in the top of the courthouse looking out.
It was in LaFleur County Court, right? It was
No, it was in Sumner County.
Sumner,
Okay.
yeah, Monday.
Because of where they found the body. He was probably murdered in LaFleur County. He was
Right.
taken at Money,
Right.
which is just up the road.
Right.
But they had the trial in Sumner County. And Dr. Trigg told me about going up there to testify in a murder trial and being in the same place where they tried the 2 men who murdered Emmett Till.
But were found innocent.
Were found innocent
At the time.
after they took time to have a Dr. Pepper.
Right.
Right.
It was a terrible time, terrible time.
Describe what was the form of communication at that time. Like, how did you find out news like that?
Newspapers.
Newspaper and a little bit of television, but more newspaper. We had a daily paper,
Which one?
Greenwood Commonwealth.
And we had the Morning Star.
Morning Star, but then we also had the
Commercial
commercial appeal out of Memphis,
and
and the
the Clarion Ledger out
Jackson.
of Jackson. So we were advocate newspaper readers.
And-
My mother and father took Life magazine,
Right.
Look magazine, the Saturday Evening Post,
Right.
the Reader's Digest. And so it was an era of reading a lot. And my grandparents took the Reader's Digest condensed books,
Right,
and
right.
we
The
read
ones.
those.
Yeah.
We did a lot of reading, and books were sacred in our house. And we had a set of Compton's encyclopedias
Right.
that we used, and
And we had the second TV on our street. Yeah.
you could
cable,
pick up
yeah.
Memphis, and that was it. You couldn't pick up
Rotor-
anything.
rotor antenna.
You're right.
Yeah.
Oh, and the one thing I have to confess about was about 8 or 9 years old. My father would get these empty 55-gallon barrels that have agricultural chemicals, and he'd let them sit out on the backyard next to the street until all the chemicals evaporated, and then he would take it to a welding shop, and you'd cut out the top, and then you'd burn trash
Right.
in there. But I had the idea of seeing what would happen if you introduce fire down into the hole. It would smell volatile, so I made a kite tail out of cloth and lit one end, and it went up into the barrel, and I ran to the side of the house and looked out, and it went in there and exploded and blew the bottom out of the 55-gallon, went up in the air 20, 30 feet and came down on the road and ignited the pavement with this chemical that fortunately went out pretty quickly, but it made a big explosion. And I suffered for that.
Right.
So, but that was an interesting thing and not get killed.
Right.
Did you get caught?
I got caught because it blew up. It made a big loud noise and brought everybody out into the backyard. So they could see what I'd done.
And then you had a Harley Davidson motorcycle. Remember that?
Yeah.
Several of y'all got the
And we were
motorcycle.
12 years old, and I
Right.
was too little. It was a Harley Davidson 165.
Right.
And Jimmy Abbott had a 125. Next door neighbor and the guy across the street, Gid Montjoy, had a 165 Harley Davidson. And we were like 12 years old. I'd have to get off the motorcycle to hold it up because I was so small. When I was 15, I weighed 105 pounds and I was 5'2". on my driver's license. So I was very small.
Yeah, and we started driving at age 15. I mean, got our license at 15.
Yep.
Did you have an interest in motorcycles before that, or was it aspirational? He wanted you to have.
Well, it was what all the kids got, and so it was the thing
y'all
to
had
do.
gone to the Indy 500.
We had gone-
Yeah, he went several years up to Indianapolis.
And that was through work, like he got.
Yeah.
He got free
Yeah.
tickets because of his work.
Right,
And at the Indy 500, and
Right.
we went up there. I was like about 12.
right.
And you remember it? You can remember.
Oh
it?
yeah, it was a cold day. It was cold up there on Memorial Day.
Right.
But
And I think someone was killed on the track.
well,
that
Bill
day.
Vukovich,
Yeah.
who had won the race the previous year,
Right.
was killed on the far side of the track. We could see the plume of smoke and stuff up in the air from the far side of the
Right.
track.
Pete, did you have any stories of doing anything that you could have gotten in trouble for?
No, I didn't blow up any. I didn't try to blow up the house.
Talk about how old were you with the haircut?
Oh, now I was real little. Our grandfather Womack was babysitting while they went to Lusco's or someplace to eat, and there was a razor, and I got
electric razor? Or a
no,
straight
a
razor?
regular
Straight
razor, yeah, with the blades. And I got the razor and just started cutting hair. I mean, I was bald up here, and I was having my picture made. I was only about 2 or 3. I mean, I was bald right here and having my picture made, so there was a big bow plopped on my hair. But yeah,
That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
It was a very.
yeah.
You had no other Wild Street?
No, I don't think I did. Yeah.
So when we were kids, Granddaddy would put the change in the jar. Would he do
Right.
that for you guys?
No, it was just for y'all. For your first Mustang. Now, you got a
Yeah.
Mustang in 65,
Five.
and I got one in 68.
And what color was your Mustang?
Navy blue.
Navy blue.
And what color
My
was your
Gulfstream Aqua. Oh, I love that
How
car.
long did you have your Mustang?
Had it till I was at Confederate. About 3 years after I was at Confederate, we traded it in when we started having kids.
Right.
What's Confederate?
That was the name of the medical center in Shreveport. It was called Confederate Memorial Medical Center. It was a charity hospital, and they used the millage from the tax that paid for the Confederate veterans' pensions to fund the hospital when all the veterans died out.
Oh, wow.
So
And I can remember in Girl Scouts, probably in Brownies, going to visit a Confederate veteran at a nursing home there in Greenwood. I can remember we were talking to him. I can really remember that in about 2nd grade.
yeah, there's a picture of me in the scrapbook when I was about 5 years old with my great aunt who was about 90 years old. This is in 1949, and she was a child during the Civil War. And so they had a picture of me standing here, and she's 90 years old. And she's talking about remembering stuff from the Civil War when she was a child. So there was some direct correlation. On the Womack side, my great-great-grandfather was the sole survivor out of 4 brothers. 4 brothers died. There were 5 brothers altogether, and he was the only survivor. The 2 died at Gettysburg, 1 died at Rock Island Prison, and 1 died in a battle in Kentucky, but he was the only survivor, and he built a little obelisk down in Coffeyville, Shiloh Cemetery, to his 4 brothers. So the Civil War was still present. Our mother enrolled us in the Children of the
Oh,
Confederacy.
yes.
And did lineages and
Right.
stuff.
And D. Lee Beckwith was a member of the Children of Confederacy. Yeah. And she was very active in DAR, Daughters of American Revolution, and colonial dames, and got into that. And then she got into genealogy and would go out to cemeteries and look at tombstones. I mean, she was very active in that. I think she got more active after I went away to college.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And she started doing all these scrapbooks.
Right.
So you mentioned about some family trips, Indianapolis, DC for the science fair. What family trips do you remember?
We would go to Biloxi. Remember,
We would
we'd
do
go
Biloxi.
to the Edgewater Hotel
Right.
when we were little with the Kellys.
Yes.
Yeah, we would go on a week-long vacation down to the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
What do you remember about that?
I can remember going once or twice, and then I remember my parents going down there, and then I caught the measles when I was staying with my grandmother, Womack, and she took care of me, and I had the measles and turned all spotted. You didn't have any vaccines for measles at that time.
And in school, we would have the polio. We would get
that
the
was the
sugar
big
cubes,
polio epidemic.
And
A
we
girl
couldn't
in
go swimming in the swimming pools,
Right,
the city-owned swimming pools.
a girl in my class in the 5th grade caught polio, and they sent her to a rehab polio hospital in Vicksburg. She stayed there for several months and came back with us. But polio was a big scare. I mean, you know, if you go out and you do something wrong, you can catch polio.
Right.
So.
I think, do we have any more stories about your childhood that you want to share? Do we miss anything?
I can't think of any offhand.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask one more question of both of you, and then I'm going to ask you just a few questions about present day. Looking back, I mean, you definitely had a childhood that I don't think a lot of people had, and what do you think about your childhood now? Like, what's your opinion about your childhood?
Well, we went to segregated schools.
Right.
The segregation was the thing going there, and we benefited from it being white. And but the fact that my parents took time in Newsweek and Life and Saturday Evening Post and read all these magazines, they had more liberal ideas in the magazines than what we were getting from our contemporaries in the community.
Right.
And I think it made us more
open-minded
than we would have been for the average person in our high school or contemporaries. Because I remember there was a restaurant there called Lackey's.
Oh, yeah.
They made the best hamburgers and barbecue in the world.
Right.
And the son of the owners of the restaurant was head of the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, you know, and he rode a motorcycle, kind of a bad guy, mean guy, and was head of the Klan. So it was prevalent, and you could get killed.
But I don't think I realized it because me being younger, you know, I just, you know, didn't know that until later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
At that time, had you formed an opinion of these things, or was it just kind of like just there, you never thought about it?
Me being younger, I don't think I really thought about it. It was just the way society was. Yeah.
yeah, and I remember going to my grandfather's store, and he sold, you know, everything, and they had
The general store.
they had a
Apartment. Yeah.
water faucet outside, just standing up water faucet, but it didn't have any signs on it. Because everybody used it, but 90% of the people in that area were African American
Right.
because they
Workers
worked on the farms. So they'd use it and I'd use it, but nobody ever reproached me for using it, but there were no signs. It was just a faucet sitting out.
Right. Hydrant. Yeah.
Hydrant.
Yeah.
Do you think, like, having stepped back and gotten another perspective by moving to Memphis or Nashville or New Orleans, you were later able to look back and see, oh, hey, this was a lot different than northern parts of the U.S.?
Well, everybody knew everybody back then. There was segregation, and it, you know, you get killed if you challenge segregation to any form or fashion. And but we got along with people. Our mother did something that most of the other people who employed domestic helpers, she made sure that Laura was on Social Security and paid her Social Security, and that was uncommon. People didn't pay Social Security for their domestic workers. And our grandfather, when I'd be driving with him, he would always stop if anybody was walking on the road and said, "You need a ride?" and would offer rides to people. So he had some humanity about him and thought of people, and stopped on the road and would put one or two people in the back, and I'd be sitting next to my grandfather, and we'd drive down the road and save them walking.
Right.
So there was mixed signals and blessings. Like he was on the school board for 20 years, and it was a segregated school board, but that was the norm in the South at that point in time.
So say that again about Dick Gregory and John Baez.
Pardon?
Say
They
that
came to
again.
Greenwood, but we didn't know it.
Well, we found out about it in the newspaper that
Right.
they, in the Commonwealth, that they
Right.
had been there and had a big rally.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Do you look back fondly on your childhood and
I do.
tell
Yeah.
me about that?
Yeah. Well, it was just, we had lots of friends and you could go anywhere in your neighborhood and, you would come in when it was dark. You would play outside and, we didn't watch that much TV. Of course there wasn't that many channels to watch, but we,
Three channels.
yeah, right. We stayed outside, played,
Yeah.
Yeah.
took tennis lessons,
Well, the problem that I had was that my father was a heavy drinker on
Right.
weekends,
Right.
and he would get intoxicated,
Right.
and he would become belligerent
Right.
on weekends, and he worked during the week,
right.
and it was a worrisome thing as a kid growing up
Right.
to have a alcoholic father.
When did that subside?
Well, when he developed cirrhosis of the liver and a lot of ascites, this was about 1974 or 5 or 6, somewhere in there.
Right.
And he wound up in the hospital for about 6 weeks, and it scared him because he looked like he was going to die. He was so acidic from the liver damage.
Yeah.
And so he voluntarily stopped drinking.
You remember that too, Mom?
Yeah, oh yeah, because it was right about the time Whitney was born in '77. So yeah,
So,
Were things like that talked about in your family?
well, she and I knew that he was drinking on the weekends.
right on the weekends. Yeah,
So it was a sad thing. I attribute a good bit of it to post-traumatic stress syndrome from World War
From
II.
World War II.
But that's still, to the teenager growing up, that's 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, that's a bad thing. I became kind of a hero to the family, and that was my little role, be out the brain and all that sort of
Right.
stuff.
Right,
Good.
absolutely.
It's not like the term PTSD was in our
Shell shock.
lexicon.
Yeah.
They called it shell
Shell
shock.
shock.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you so obviously I have no recollection, and I'm sure Whitney doesn't have any recollection of any of that. I remember Big Mama and Granddaddy having separate rooms,
Right.
and I assume a lot of that was just due to his discomfort, right? To his,
Right.
a lot of that had to do with, or did they always have separate rooms, or
No.
No.
But, when they got older and
He would
his-
listen to the radio
Right.
all night. And I do that to some extent when Sally's not there. Like last night, I turned on Sirius and listened to Escape on Sirius
Right.
on a little Bluetooth speaker. But he listened to radio station in St. Louis.
Right.
And he listened all night to that, and he'd go to sleep on that.
when was he diagnosed with diabetes? Because he was diabetic.
He was diagnosed with diabetes at the time with the cirrhosis.
Right.
And when he was in the hospital for 6
Right.
weeks.
Gotcha.
Diuresing off that fluid.
And going back, I'm sorry to jump around so much. I hope this is okay. When he was recovering from his injury, his second injury from World War II, how long was he?
In the neighborhood of a year, because
I
they didn't.
thought it was closer to 2 years.
2 years,
Yeah.
may have
yeah.
been 2 years.
Yeah.
He said that he was able to cage drinks up until VJ Day. But after VJ Day, nobody ever bought him a drink on Canal Street. He was in the military hospital in New Orleans having surgery. His leg had been a cast. He'd be on crutches walking around, and veteran from World War II. I'll buy you a drink, and so he could get free drinks.
He told me he was in Pensacola a little while, some of the time. And then I think he would talk about when we lived in Memphis, we would go by, and I thought he spent a little time there.
In Memphis,
But
and
our mother said that this man would come home when you were little, 1 or 2 years old, and you didn't know who he was, and he was gone because he was going back to rehab, and you were, because you lived with your grandparents.
right,
and,
in Berkeley.
yeah.
I lived the first couple of years of my life in Berkeley, and then when he finally was released,
Right.
we got the apartment on Strong Avenue
With the Kellys, yeah.
with the Kellys.
Yeah.
And it was hard on him, and he, like I said, was a hoarder. He had all these cans of pork and beans that he would eat every night, diabetic. He wound up with a palsy in one eye and had to wear a patch. Remember
Right,
the patch?
Right.
And he, did fairly well considering.
Right.
His big honor was to be head of the Elks Club.
That's
Remember
right.
that?
Exalted ruler.
Exalted
of
ruler of the Elks
Elks
Club.
Club.
That was the one thing that he wanted
Right.
out of life.
Right.
And that was after he retired and
Right.
he ran the Red Carpet Liquor Store.
That's right. Because y'all would get lollipops, suckers out of the lollipop jar at the red carpet liquor.
Dum-dums.
Dum-dums,
Yeah,
yeah.
but he was a very smart man,
Right.
well-read, and like I said, he should have gone to college.
Right. He took some business courses, but wasn't able to go to college, yeah.
GI Bill, sent a lot of people, paid their expenses to college, but that was kind of the shame, not shame for me, but shame that he didn't do it and make more of himself.
And then you told me not too long ago that he almost was called back to
Well,
do a
no,
desk job
he was
Korea.
worried about it.
Right, right.
In 1950, he got a check in the mail for back pay from 1945. And he had been retired medically with a 30% pension
Discharge.
as a
Medical
first
pension.
lieutenant.
Yeah.
But while he was in the hospital having all these procedures, they automatically promoted him to captain, but he didn't know about
He
it.
didn't know about it.
And so he thought that this was at the beginning of the Korean War, and he thought he was going to be called up for a desk job, and he didn't want to have anything to do with the Army, period, even a desk job.
Right.
And other people that he knew were called up.
Right.
And his brother, Gail, was called up for the military, and so we got some money out of it, but he worried about it for several months that he was going to be called up.
What do you think was his big aversion?
The fact that he was wounded in the military.
Severely wounded, yeah.
And like I said, they were talking about cutting his leg off.
Right, oh, absolutely.
And that's not the days when, you talk about shell shock, they didn't deal with the mental trauma.
Psychological trauma.
They dealt with the physical trauma, but didn't let them work through
Right.
the mental
And
trauma.
we all knew people as kids growing up who had mental disabilities from being in combat, and they were withdrawn, and they didn't go out, and they were the brother or children of some people we knew, but there were several in the neighborhood over in
Yeah.
North Greenwood
Right.
that had disability from the war.
But he said that shoulder wound, his best friend, a buddy who'd been with him, who was killed right beside, that was, when he first got over to France, that was the one, and they patched him up and sent him right back out, so.
After the war, he would not have anything to do with, he wouldn't go to the base exchange
Right.
until we were about, you were about 12 and I was about 15.
Right.
There was a base exchange at
Greenville,
and then there was one over at Columbus.
So he didn't go to like the VFW or anything like that?
He was a member, but he didn't,
He got the magazine. I used to read the
Right,
magazines.
right. But he didn't talk about the war until
Right.
not too long before he passed away.
Right.
We didn't hear stories
Stories.
about his war experiences until not too long before he died. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you named your two first sons, Daniel and David, after Dr. Triggs.
Well,
No.
Daniel after Dr. Trigg, but David just had a nice. Sally liked that, and I liked it, but it wasn't purposely for his two sons.
Gotcha.
But the
David
older,
Trigg Womack was
the oldest
named
one was.
Was there any connection with the name Nancy?
Nancy,
Yeah.
yes. Sally's aunt was named Nancy.
Nancy.
So it had no connection to Granddaddy?
No. I mean, I named one, she named one, I named one, she named one. We settled on John, John Matthew.
Yeah, four
Matthew
guys.
was a family name. We were going to have 5, but she was saying, 4's enough.
Right.
4's enough. So,
And you were named Harvey Womack Campbell Jr., but I said, I grew up in a house where there was
Little Charles and Little Charles.
Big Charles, and then
Yeah.
our grandfather was Charles Theodore Womack.
Theo.
But they called him Theo.
Theo.
But I said, we're
Yeah.
not going to have two Harveys in the house.
Right,
That's where we came up with the Hank
right.
after several weeks.
I have just a few more questions, and I want to ask you about meeting Pop and stuff like that, but I want to do that tomorrow.
Right.
Just describe meeting Sally, and then describe your family.
Oh, like I said, I met Sally on a blind date in February of '65, right after she turned 18. And the couple that knew Tom and his girlfriend, they knew Sally, and so they fixed us up, and we went to a basketball game, and we won, and then we went to the Grand Ole Opry, as I said, and we just started dating, and it was a good fit. And went to her house just before I did the trip up to New York State and got to meet her folks
Right.
in
The
that
Hales.
summer. And then I'd call Sally once a week from a payphone. Payphones, you know, you put quarters in, you talk for 3 or 4 minutes, and it was just a nice, good feeling. And then senior year, I was there with her, and then I tried to get her to transfer to New Orleans to LSU, and then we're going to get married.
Right.
But she wanted to finish at Vanderbilt, and so she did, and we got married after my sophomore year of medical school and her senior year.
And Danny was born in Shreveport.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
And
but
the
we
other
made
3
sure,
kids.
she worked in pediatrics when we first got there. When we decided to have children, it's a mutual decision that she'd quit because she wouldn't be exposed to the viruses that kids would carry. And I moonlighted and made enough to spend about, we bought a house for $14,000.
Yeah.
No, a little more than that. And Danny went by there recently and looked at the house where he was born
Oh,
In
boy.
Shreveport?
in Shreveport. He
Shreveport.
on a geocaching thing.
Oh.
That was our early family, and then doing the training there and then moving directly to Shreveport. We moved there in June, and she delivered Nancy in October.
Yeah, in Cookville.
In Cookville.
Yeah.
76?
75.
75.
So
The pink house.
in
One of the
25,
pink house across the street from the hospital.
Right.
wasn't it? Yeah.
we rented across the street from the hospital, and we had a Cocker Spaniel.
Yeah.
And she would steal the workers' lunches that were doing construction work on the hospital. And there were only 20.
Nancy or the dog?
The dog would steal the construction workers, but Nancy was a cute little girl,
Yeah.
and our house is now the lobby of the main entrance of the hospital.
Really?
It's because all that area was bought up,
Taken up, yeah.
and the hospital has expanded there, and they've got about 2,200 employees. So hopefully it won't go the way of Greenwood.
But you were the first urologist in the upper Cumberland area. That
Yeah.
was an incentive to move up there
Right.
between Nashville and
It
Knoxville.
looked at Murfreesboro, but they had 2 urologists in Murfreesboro. My great uncle's there, and my family was from there, the Hartman side.
Right.
Right.
So,
Yeah, do you know about, again, going back just a touch, do you know when the Hartmans or Womacks made their way to Mississippi?
oh yeah, my grandfather Hartman came down about 1900
From Murfreesboro?
from Murfreesboro,
Right.
and he lived on a family farm out the road that went from Murfreesboro to Franklin.
Okay.
It's now a subdivision,
Right.
but it had been in the family since the early 1800s, and his grandfather had been in the Civil War, and his father had been a child during the Civil War, and he was upset with the Yankees coming through looting. He was like 7, 8 years old. He had a little saddle that he rode a pony, and they stole his saddle, which was too small for an adult.
Right.
This is my great-grandfather. I don't remember him. I'm just been told the story that he was upset about the looters stealing the saddle.
Right. And then the Womacks getting to Coffeyville.
Well, they went through Gadsden. They came from
Gadsden, Alabama?
Gadsden.
Yeah,
They lived
Gadsden.
in Gadsden.
Right.
Yeah.
Womacks were in the Sequatchie Valley about 1800.
Okay.
The bottom of the Sequatchie Valley near Chattanooga.
Yeah.
Then they moved into Alabama.
Right. Gadsden.
And then they moved into the Coffeyville area before the Civil War, and like I said, the 5 brothers enlisted,
Right.
and 1 survived.
Right.
Our direct ancestor. So it was pretty bad on them.
Yeah. And what year did y'all move to Cookeville?
75, summer of 75.
2 houses there. The house you're in now that you've been in since,
We moved in that in 83.
and prior to that was.
We lived in another house
Brown Avenue.
on Brown Avenue that was very close, about a block away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have some pretty incredible stories.
Yeah. Well, we've had all sorts of gunshot wounds and stuff. I remember getting called the day after Thanksgiving of 76 and saying there was a gunshot wound in Sparta, and the surgeon there was going in to operate, and this was before helicopters, and she was in shock, an 18-year-old girl, and so I gathered up some catheters and tools and jumped in my car, and they didn't have 111 at that time to get there, so it took a few minutes to get there, and then I helped him operate on her, and she lost 4 units of blood and transfused her, and it damaged her kidney and cut her ureter in 2, and I repaired that and had a tube coming out of her, and she got all right, and it made taking my boards 2 years after you finish training, they review all your cases that you've done, and they quiz you, and you have to take tests and pathology slides and x-ray slides. And so I went to Kansas City for that, and my last name was Womack, so I was, Womack and Zuckerman were the last 2 out of about 250 people, and they wanted to get the hell out of there. So I had the secretary of the board, and he opened my cases, and he pulled out this one on different kind of paper. It was a gunshot wound. I told him what he did, and he said, "Congratulations." And so normally they grilled you for about 30 minutes, and I was talked about my case for about 3. Because
They just knew it was.
well, they figured if I had a good result from the gunshot wound, I'd probably do the other stuff
In your sleep, yeah.
okay.
And then also talk about when
She's a friend of mine on Facebook.
Oh, wow.
She was 18 now, and she's a grandmother, and she married a highway patrolman, but her father killed himself after he shot her.
Oh, wow.
22 Magnum.
Wow.
Her father shot her?
Her father shot her. Shot her mother too, in the leg, but it was superficial. So it was a terrible situation. But I operated on several people in her family because I figured if I was good enough to operate on her in a gunshot wound, I was good enough to take care of their other stuff.
And then talk about being mayor. You served
Oh.
how many terms as mayor?
2 terms as mayor,
Starting when?
98.
98.
98 to 06. And then I served 2 other terms on the city council after I worked through the 08 recession. Thank God I was not in politics in 08.
Right.
And I was working, because the euphoria in the stock market now is one thing, but it was really bad in 08, if you can recall back then. Stocks, the value of my retirement fund was just way down.
I remember talking to you during that.
So
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate. The peak of my political thing was in 2000. I went to a meeting of Democratic mayors for Gore,
Oh, yeah.
and I sat next to Jerry Brown right here. He was mayor of Oakland at that point. He had been governor of California, and then he was coming back, and he was mayor of Oakland, so we sat and talked while we were at this mayors for Gore. So.
You had a lot of notes to compare between Cookeville, Tennessee and
Oakland.
California.
And in the state of California that he had been governor of. So it was, and the other thing is accompanying the Russian ambassador.
I was going to say, please speak about that.
In 2016, World Affairs Council had Ambassador Sergei Kislyak to see the hockey in Nashville, and I accompanied him to FedEx in Memphis, and we got to go to B.B. King's restaurant.
Right.
At the Itabena Cafe,
Right.
and then his nightclub below that, and then we went out to FedEx and watched all these packages come in and leave, and FedEx took care of my room and everything. And then the next day, we had a tour of Elvis's, Graceland, VIP tour there, and then when he left to go back to Washington, he gave me a bottle of vodka.
Did he speak English?
Y'all better than me. He was a nuclear physicist,
Really?
and he was from Ukraine.
What was his name again?
Sergei Kislyak. You can look him up on Wikipedia.
Was he involved with Chernobyl?
No. He was a diplomat. He was on the Soviet Atomic Energy Commission because he was from Ukraine, but he went to the science high school in Moscow and was destined to be a nuclear physicist. And so the Soviets put him on the International Atomic Energy Commission, and he was so smooth that they moved him over into the diplomatic corps.
Yeah.
And he wound up being a longtime ambassador to the U.S. and wound up on the Kennedy Center board.
Wow.
So, I mean, he was pretty sharp.
Yeah.
He said he took his father, who had been in World War II, but he took his father a bottle of scotch that he could get by being international when things were tough. Right. And his grandfather was used to drinking vodka, and he took a slug of scotch and said, "This tastes like shit." So that's an event from Kislyak, you know, that you get when you're in the nightclub drinking wine together.
Wow.
Fantastic.
So that's kind of the nice little things in my life.
Yeah. So tell us about, how did that whole get started? Tell us what they were. And
Well, when we were in Shreveport, we would go crawfishing in the bayous. You'd take some of the doctors and residents, and you'd take a chicken neck and tie it to a crab net, and it'd have wires coming up from it, and you'd put it in a bayou, and then you'd come by about every 20 minutes with a broomstick, jerk it up, and there'd be a whole bunch of crawfish gnawing on a chicken neck. Yeah. You'd dump them in a burlap sack and then put it in a freezing ice chest, and then you'd purge them. You'd pour a pound of Morton salt with all these crawfish, and that would be hypertonic and cause them to puke out their guts, and wash them and get them sweet and clean, and then you'd cook them in these big wash tubs.
And so you brought this to Cookeville.
I brought this to Cookeville.
And when? When do you recall?
1980.
Okay. And how would you get the crawfish into Cookeville?
The first time, Jack Moore, who was a physician with a plane, we flew down to Moorhead and met my father there, and he arranged everything, and we filled up the back of the plane with ice chest of crawfish and took off for Tennessee.
Yeah.
And so, how many people would attend these big crawfish?
About 150.
Right.
150 people. And what do I remember about a canoe?
Yeah, we could fill the canoe with ice and put the beer and the Cokes and everything in the ice in the canoe.
Right.
I love how you found a tradition someplace else and you brought it and shared it with others. I think that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah.
I've never heard about this.
From about 1980 to about 1986, we had one every year, and it kept getting bigger and bigger. And finally, I met people in the garage that didn't know me, and I said, "It's too big."
Right.
That's pretty funny.
Right.
I have such fond memories of Cookeville growing up because we'd come once a year.
At least, yeah.
Yeah. And
Spend some time with the
we'd
cousins.
spend a week in Cookeville in the summer. We'd spend a week in Greenwood for sure, and Thanksgiving would usually be in Greenwood, where we'd all be in Greenwood.
Right.
And I remember driving from Birmingham up to Cookeville, going through Saudi Daisy and all that,
Oh, yeah.
different rest areas and all that, and getting there and just being like, because there were 4 kids, there was just so much stuff that you could get into.
It was all sorts of.
It was a lot of fun. So it was always great. You had always the latest technology.
The Betamax recorder and the microwave.
Yep, you were the.
We had a
first
Mana radar range. We got that in '75.
And I remember you had a trash compactor in the kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
That was a big deal. 'Cause,
Sally loved that.
yeah, we didn't. I'd never seen anything like that. And,
Yeah, we're on our second one.
right. But you had computers. Your kids were.
Apple IIe's, and Danny playing with the computer, and he's 11 years old, and you're like about 6. Or...
Yeah. Oh yeah. And Miles now will ask me about different games on the computer, and I'll be like, well, I didn't have it. We didn't have a computer, but I remember playing it in Cookeville, various computer games.
And it gave Danny his profession.
Yeah.
And he's used it, and I remember he was there recently, before Thanksgiving, and the computer system for the state of Delaware went down for their judicial system.
Oh, wow.
And he and another guy are playing around on the computer fixing remotely
Wow.
the computer system for the state of Delaware.
Wow.
So, you know, Sally's brother was in Thailand during the Vietnam War, and he wound up being a technician for the computer for the state of California.
The computer.
The computer. You know, and wound up learning programming, and he stayed with Unisys until he passed away several years ago, you know, with cancer. And he was the longest serving employee for Unisys, which was Sperry Rand. And I worked in Shreveport. There was a 155 millimeter shell factory 20 miles from Shreveport that made all the artillery shells for Vietnam.
Oh.
And my first day of training, July the 1st, 1970, when I was a full-fledged doctor, I said, "What do you want me to do?" And they said, "Go out to the shell plant and spend the night there and you'll make $100. So I went 20 miles and they said, "What do I do here?" And they said, "You just go in there and go to sleep." They said, "If anything happens, there won't be anybody wounded. It'll blow up and kill about 15 people." They had these pods of places where they fill the shells.
Yeah.
And 5 years before, one had blown up and killed everybody.
Wow.
But it was a couple of miles from the hospital,
Yeah.
so which was a World War II type hospital that was there. And so they've opened that place back up to build 155 millimeter shells for Ukraine. So it's a small world that rotates.
Yeah.
This was in the end of the 70s for Vietnam. And now we're back where we started with 155 millimeter shells. That's something to think about.
Right.
So I've borne you with my talking.
No,
No.
No, you're not. No,
we don't want to wear you out.
not at all.
Well, I'm getting hoarse.
Yep.